You're all beautiful people, okay? I have to say that. It's a room full of beautiful people. All right, good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you to everyone who came and showed up tonight. It's very important, especially in a midterm year, but any year, to play as big a role as you can in your local politics. Politics starts in your backyard. So whatever side of the debate you're on, whatever candidate you're supporting, thank you for supporting them. Thank you for being involved. And most importantly, come November and come the general election, we have to defeat the Democrats. We can't be handing power to Marxists. So let's keep that in mind. I guess as we're going to start, we'll introduce both candidates. This is Zone 1. I would like to welcome up to the respective podiums Tammy Sharp and Chuck Isbell. As Caleb mentioned, we'll be doing 2 minutes of opening statements. The order is alphabetical, and closing statements will be reversed. We will start with Chuck Isbell.
Okay, I'm Chuck Isbell. I'm a father of 3 kids. My day job, I'm a site manager. I'm also managing a construction site. I teach at night for a trade school in Nashville. And I'm pretty busy, but I feel like I can make a difference with this and do more than that's going on at the moment. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I've had a very long day, and this is my first debate ever. But just if you will mind the pun, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. There's been some accusations thrown about me, some things. I had an ex-girlfriend, and she filed an ex parte order of protection against me, which means I wasn't guilty. I had my day in court today. I was found everything was dismissed because there was a lack of evidence. There was nothing there. I haven't done anything, and I hope to move on with that part of my life. If anybody wants to see it, at the end of this tonight, I have copies of the dismissal. So, but anyway, I think the children are the future for Rutherford County, and we need to push forward and make a more concerted effort in pushing academics and things into the county as far as what we're doing for the school board and the school system. Sorry. Is that it?
Okay.
Okay.
And Tammy Sharp, your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I want to see you at the next school board. This is a much better crowd than what we have at the school board. First, I would like to recognize Madam Chairman Claire Maxwell. Thank you guys for coming out. Current school board member Stan Vaught, and our former Rutherford County Chairman Austin Maxwell. A lot of you know me, but a lot of you don't. So I've been on the school board since 2018. We've done a lot since then. A lot of building, a lot of charter schools, a lot of new programs, and I would really like to continue that. One of the best programs that we've started recently at Laverne High School that I was instrumental in was the welding program. Started 2 years ago. I brought the teacher to the table. Last year in September, we got about $100,000 sponsorship from Harley-Davidson, DeWalt Tools, and Milwaukee Tools. And Billy Lane, if any of y'all know him, he's a racer. He and other people are mentoring our children. And one of my programs or purposes is to get more trades into our schools. We do a great job with our college and career. Our trades have kind of gone down over the years. Everyone focused more on college, and I would like to go back to at least a half and half on our trades. One of the things that Madam Chair helped with was Jazz Fest, was for the students and the people who were producing it. I've picked it up, and we've helped produce it for the last 4 years. This year will be the 4th year.
All right, among the topics that we're going to be speaking about tonight, the candidates will be speaking and answering questions about tonight include trust, process, legitimacy, accountability, ideology, priorities, communication, growth and funding, charter schools and school choice, and Rutherford County Republican principles. The first question is about those Republican principles. So I'll start with Chuck Isbell. The question is, how do you define the core Republican principles in Rutherford County? And can you give specific examples of how you would apply those principles when making school board decisions? You got 90 seconds.
Okay. Smaller government, and we need to be good stewards of the county's money and make sure we're taking care of the children, providing for all their needs academically and physically and mentally in the schools. We need to make sure the children have the things they need. And as Ms. Sharp said, we need to be able to provide more stuff for the trades and everything. Like I said, I'm a trade school teacher, and it's very important. For every 5 people that retire, we only get 2 to come back into the field, and we need more people to get into that. I would love to push that more so. I was at the board retreat at TCAT, and so we need more of that. But sorry. But anyway, like I said, I am blanking out here. Anyway, the core. Damn. Anyways, smaller government and doing more with less as far as the money goes.
Okay, Ms. Sharp, how do you define the core Republican principles in Rutherford County? And can you give specific examples of how you would apply those principles when making school board decisions? You've got 90 seconds.
Thank you. So, as Mr. Isbell said, smaller government, more with less. I think we've done a lot of that. We have brought prayer back to the boardroom over the last year. We were awarded the statue of praying hands from Franklin Road Baptist Church. We also took out close to 200 of the bad books from our libraries across the platform.
All right, we'll move on to the second question. This one involves trust and transparency. Many community members feel there is a lack of transparency in how decisions are made. What specific steps would you take to make the board's decision-making process more open and understandable before votes occur? We'll start with Chuck Isbell, 90 seconds.
Okay. Transparency is the.
Sorry.
Is it really?
Alternate.
Oh, we alternate. I'm sorry. We'll start with Ms. Sharp.
Sorry. So sorry. Thank you.
Apologize. I
No
thought we were
worries.
doing the same
No
order the whole
worries.
time. That's right.
No
We are
worries.
alternating. Yeah.
So thank you for that question. So I think part of our role as a school board member is educating the general public about our policies, how things actually work, how long it really takes to bring some projects to fruition. Our schools take about 2 years from start to finish, and how much it costs. It's ridiculous for the price that we are paying for our plans, $45,000 for plans. But part of our role is educating the general public on how things work and how the policy is, where to find the policy, and answering their calls when they call and trying to help them through the system.
Thank you. All right. Many community members feel there is a lack of transparency in how decisions are made. What specific steps would you take to make the board's decision-making process more open and understandable before votes occur?
Like I said, transparency. I think more parents need to be involved in the decision making. What that means is that if they feel like we need to be available for phone calls, conversations, meet and greets, and different things. We need more people getting engaged and asking us questions and telling us what they need and how they need it and why they need it. And we need to be able to, respect their opinions and follow through with that as far as we're going through it. I don't know everything. And so it's getting, the input and getting input out is what we need to do for, just to be more transparent.
All right. Third question is involving public input.
Yeah.
And this is pretty much related to what we just spoke about. Residents consistently express that public comments are heard, but don't influence outcomes. What concrete system would you implement to ensure community input clearly affects board decisions? Chuck Isbell first.
Okay. First of all, we have an open mind before we before we go into the board and make decisions. Take the community input. Again, I would say we need to have more outreach with that, more communication with the public, and see what people need and what they're feeling is lacking as far as moving forward.
Okay. Residents consistently express that public comments are heard but don't influence outcomes. What concrete system would you implement to ensure community input clearly affects board outcomes?
Thank you for the question. That has been addressed before. We've spoken many times about providing an email address that's anonymous, an email box to send things to, complaints, praises, whatever, and also having surveys from our parents and allow them. I know that they send a lot of surveys out to the parents, but we really need a way that people can report, that it's anonymous, that the teachers don't know who it is, or the teachers can report. Katie Darby has mentioned many times of us having a hotline so they can leave a recording of whatever the complaint is or whatever the problem is, so that it can be solved that way. And it's not going back to the school system, it's staying in the central office. Because a lot of people don't want to report because they're afraid that they're going to get in trouble for that.
All right. This next topic in question is about predetermined decisions, or what's known as rubber stamping. There is a growing perception that major decisions are effectively made before meetings and simply approved publicly. How would you ensure board deliberations are genuine and not perceived as predetermined? Tammy Sharp.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, I think more people need to show up at the board meetings, especially the work session. The work session is when we have our agenda and all the plans that we have, what have you, building or changing a new curriculum. We discuss those on Tuesday nights. That people have asked us to stop that or not do that, but that to me is a way for parents to come and see or watch the video if they have questions, if they have concerns, if they have ideas. We have Tuesday night, Wednesday afternoon, and Thursday morning before we come in on Thursday night to have feedback. So I think that's an important part of giving them more input into the system if they would show up. I mean, there are nights that we go to the school board meetings, and this would be a big crowd if we had that. And listen, there's a lot of times they're boring. There's a lot of times they're boring, and I get it, but they need to. We're, like you said earlier, almost 80% of the budget, and they need to be able to see that and come and talk about it.
Okay. There is a growing perception that major decisions are effectively made before meetings and simply approved publicly. How would you ensure board deliberations are genuine and not perceived as predetermined?
Right. It goes back to transparency and talking to the parents and the staff, and Dr. Sullivan and stuff like, and the things that go with that, to before we go into making a decision. We need to hear all the sides of the situation. Anyway, good grief, I'm blanking out here. But we need to be able to pull the resources of the community as far as getting input and put into a collaborative thing, so that way we can make the best informed decision with the parents there. We need more community input for those decisions moving forward.
All right. We are on to the fifth question. This one revolves around accountability of individual board members. Voters are increasingly holding individual board members accountable for outcomes, not just the board as a whole. How do you personally take responsibility for your votes, and how should voters evaluate your performance? We'll start with Chuck Isbell.
I would want people to call me out on it. I prefer you to, you could call me, text me, email me, tell me what your complaint is or what your criticism is, and educate me as far as moving forward. I'm open. I give my phone number out to everybody, so anybody can call me. I'm here. So I would welcome the input.
Okay.
Hold me accountable.
Voters are increasingly holding individual board members accountable for outcomes, not just the board as a whole. How do you personally take responsibility for your votes, and how should voters evaluate your performance? Tammy Sharp.
Thank you. Yes, of course, they should hold us accountable. My phone number is one of the very few phone numbers that is still on the Rutherford County School Board website. and it's been out there for a long time. They took them down during COVID for whatever reason. I don't know. They just took them down, and then we started getting complaints. Mine's been out there. I've taken phone calls at 2 a.m. I took a phone call right before we came in here. So a lot of people they know that they can call me. There are people from other areas. They call me, they email me. And I'm very open to them calling and asking about how we voted for certain things. And I think that it's important that they do call us and ask us for certain things, because there's sometimes a narrative out there that's not anywhere near what the truth is.
All right, we're halfway through our list of questions here. We'll move on to the sixth topic. This is a very important question, a very emotionally charged question: parental rights versus school authority. When there is a conflict between parental preferences and school policies, especially regarding curriculum, obscene or inappropriate materials, or student-related issues, who should have the final say and why? We will start with Tammy Sharp.
Okay. Of course, it should be the parents. The parents are being held biblically and responsible for their children. There's a lot of things that we don't necessarily have control over as far as buying curriculum and things like that. But when there's a national move amongst us, people need to pay attention, because if it starts picking up speed and everything, there's a whole lot of there. And the parents need to have the final say. I know the parents aren't always 100% right when it comes to how they want to settle disputes and things like that with the kids in the schools, but ultimately it's parents' rights.
Okay. This is, again, parental rights versus school authority. When there's a conflict between parental preferences and school policies, especially regarding curriculum, obscene or inappropriate materials, or student-related issues, who should have the final say and why? Chuck.
The parents have the final say. They also have the first say. It's their children. If they want their children to not be exposed to certain things, then they have a right to that. If they want their child to be exposed to certain things, then that's their right as well. But it's the parents' choice in what happens to their child.
All right, we'll move on to the seventh question. This one revolves around budget priorities and trade-offs. With limited resources, what would be your top 2 funding priorities, and what would you be willing to reduce or eliminate to support them? We'll start with Chuck Isbell.
Okay, as far as reducing, I would reduce the board out of town trips. There's plenty of ways to spend money here. And that would be one of the big expenses I would cut. As far as going out of town for events and stuff like that, I think the money should stay here in the county, but also that it's a waste of money. Last year they were talking about doing the PRZ, and it was to save money, and it was that was a bad idea. And then, we just have to look at the budget line by line to figure out what is needed and what's not needed, what we can cut back on and what we need to increase on.
What would be your top 2 funding priorities?
Like I said, the out-of-state, the out-of-board trips,
okay,
and then the academics.
Okay.
Yeah, big super.
With limited resources, what would be your top 2 funding priorities, and what would you be willing to reduce or eliminate to support them? Tammy Sharp.
Thank you. So one of the reasons we go out of town for trips is we are members of a National School Board Association. About 2 or 3 years ago, they came out pretty woke. Y'all seen it on TV. And so we've not really been members, and we've not gone out of town at all. And they're for training. So we're required every year to have a certain amount of training. And a lot of that we can get here. A lot of the national training we went to, because they have bigger vendors and things like that. One of the reasons that we were looking at the PRZ is because we literally have buses in Smyrna High School that there's apartments in the back of the complex that pick up kids and they drive them to the front of the school. So there are a lot of ways that we can trim surgically, scalpel, not a hatchet, that we can trim the transportation, and that is one of them. And we do need to look at it again. Obviously, the Title I schools where parents cannot do something like that, we don't need to do it. Was not in favor of doing the whole thing, and when we first started talking about it, the Title I schools were not included. The night that we voted, the Title I schools were included, and that's why I voted against it.
All right. There appears to be a growing gap between how the board communicates and how the public perceives those responses. How would you change the board's communication approach to rebuild trust while maintaining professionalism? We'll start with Tammy.
Well, I mean, people reach out to me all the time. I ran for the second time unopposed in the Republican primary and in the general election. So I think there is, a good amount of trust for me being out there. When I came in, Laverne had very depressed. They've been looked over for a number of years, and we're finally getting some movement, and everybody's pedaling in the right direction for Laverne and Smyrna. Laverne has their new annex that Miss Maxwell and I voted on. The 4 annexes, Riverdale, Oakland, and Smyrna and Laverne. So their new annex will be opening in August. I think it's the 16th.
Okay, there appears to be a growing gap between how the board communicates and how the public perceives those responses. How would you change the board's communication approach to rebuild trust while maintaining professionalism? Chuck Isbell.
I think we should do more social media posts, put more information out there. I think it needs to be more readily available. But the other thing is that everybody needs to be more receptive to accepting communication from people. Again, through phone calls, email, texting, whatever that requires of people and what people want to do. We live in the digital age, and there's a lot of ways to get a hold of everybody and put information out there. We need to be able to put more information out there. Too much information is not a bad thing.
Okay. I'm having a hard time turning the page. There we go. All right, this question is about strategic planning versus reactive spending. School overcrowding is already an issue, but some leaders have warned about the risk of building schools in the wrong locations as growth shifts across the county. How would you ensure long-term planning aligns with future growth, not just current demand? And how would you prioritize where new schools are built? We'll start with Chuck Isbell.
I know the RSP has done a deep dive into that and picked out certain locations for schools. We need to move forward with that. But with the overcrowding at Laverne and Smyrna, we need at least one high school for both of those areas to help alleviate the overcrowding. So, moving forward, that's one of the things we need. We need more schools. We need more high schools. We're packing the kids in there. The annexes are a great thing, but they're actually about 10 years too late. When that annex opens in Laverne, it's going to be at capacity. It's at capacity now. So we need to start thinking long-term, more of these, and look at more of the projections of what we're going to have for kids and follow through with that and, base our planning on the projected number of kids we're going to have in the next 5 years.
Okay, school overcrowding is already an issue, but some leaders have warned about the risk of building schools in the wrong locations as growth shifts across the county. How would you ensure long-term planning aligns with future growth, not just current demand? And how would you prioritize where new schools are built? Tammy Sharp.
Thank you. So as Mr. Isbell said, Ethel Charles was here, as well as our RSP, and their numbers are both lining up. And we are going to see about 30,000 new homes in the area. However, right now, Laverne is not growing. And when we open the annex, and Smyrna was just opened, Laverne is not showing the population of needing a new school. Now, we will need one when all those on the other side of 24, when they get built. And they're in the process, there's about 10,000 permits on that side. But right now, I think I've looked at Katie Darby and I and myself, and I had a realtor who looked at about 9 pieces of property. One of the things, we're landlocked in Laverne, or there's not buildable property. And we looked at Smyrna, but that deal was killed. Instead of building a building there next door to Smyrna High School, they're now building a Kroger because the deal was killed. So we could have put another high school, another annex there, but it was killed.
All right, final question. Rutherford County is growing rapidly and new schools are clearly needed, as both candidates have stated. but the school board does not control taxation and must rely on the county commission for funding. How would you advocate for and prioritize new school funding while also ensuring projects are built as efficiently and cost effectively as possible? We'll start with Tammy Sharp.
Thank you. So there's a couple people here in the room. I know Stan Vault and myself and some other people. He probably doesn't even know that I know. We've not discussed it. They have gone to the private industry, and we've been trying to think out of the box, go to private industries and allow them to create a partnership with us. And that's one way to cut a lot of costs. I know that there was someone who had a warehouse. I've been trying to get them to lease property at the Stones River, lease property somewhere else. And previous administration said that there was a codes issue. There's not a codes issue because Paul Mitchell is a school there at Stones River. There's a whole lot of other things. We should look more at existing buildings and try to get our CFOs because what I was told was even if we lease it and even if the company who owns it builds it out for us, pays for the whole thing, it's still a liability, just like if it was money we borrowed as taxes. And I don't know, I'm not a CPA. I've spoke to a couple of them to try to see why that is or why that the county thinks of it that way. I've not gotten an answer back yet. So.
Okay, thank you. Rutherford County is growing rapidly and new schools are clearly needed, but the school board does not control taxation and must rely on the county commission for funding. How would you advocate for and prioritize new school funding while also ensuring projects are built as efficiently and cost effectively as possible? Chuck Isbell.
It would have to do a lot with the strategic planning and working with the county commission to secure those funds moving forward. We need to be able to grow quickly and be flexible at the same time with the schools that need to be built and put in place. Yeah.
All right, that concludes our question segment of the Zone 1 debate. We will now move to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, 2 minutes to give their closing statements. We will start with Tammy Sharp.
Thank you so much. Thank you again all for coming out. For the voters that are here in my district, I humbly ask for your vote starting on Wednesday. There's a lot of things that we're working on right now that are kind of state of the art. I have some other things that are in the pipeline, and I would like to finish that in the next 4 years. And I'm not going to run again, but there's a lot of great things coming on board for our system, and I would appreciate your vote.
Okay, and Chuck Isbell, 2 minutes for your closing statement in the Zone 1 debate.
Okay. Like I said, I'm Chuck Isbell, and I would appreciate your vote. I'm going to thank everybody for coming out and participating in this. Like it's been stated, early voting starts Wednesday, and we need this voting year. This voting year is a low turnout year. We need everybody to come out and vote, and vote their conscience and what they want to see moving forward with the county.
All right, that concludes our Zone 1 debate. Thank you both for attending tonight, everybody in the audience, and good luck in your elections.
Thank you.